Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a massive day of news to unpack for Monday, June 15th, 2026. Right now, we're watching a really fascinating paradox unfold. On one hand, global physical trade routes are suddenly reopening. But on the exact same day, our most advanced digital models are being forced completely offline. It's literally a global reset colliding with an unprecedented tech standoff. And we're going to break it all down for you.
Here's the roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll hit the shifting geopolitics in the Middle East and that new US-Iran peace framework. Then we're off to Europe for the G7 summit agenda. From there, we'll pivot to the massive AI crisis unfolding right here at home. And finally, we'll wrap up with today's biggest cultural, sports, and climate milestones. Let's get into it.
All right, Part 1, US-Iran Peace Framework, Shifting the Global Map. We're taking a look at the brand new formal agreement extending the ceasefire and finally bringing an end to the 15-week US-Iran war. To really grasp the sheer scale of the global relief happening today, you just need to know one number: 20%. That is the exact chunk of the entire world's oil supply that flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Because of this new peace framework, the naval blockade on Iranian ports is finally ending, and the strait is officially scheduled to reopen this Friday. For 15 long weeks, this closure choked off supply chains and sent global fuel prices absolutely skyrocketing, impacting literally everything from shipping costs to the stuff we buy every day. So just the anticipation of getting that 20% back online is already giving global markets a massive sigh of relief.
We are on a seriously fast-moving geopolitical clock right now. We're transitioning from a 15-week conflict straight into Monday's major breakthrough, which leads us right to Friday's formal reopening of the strait. But honestly, Friday is where the pressure cooker really turns on. This deal kicks off an incredibly tight 60-day window to negotiate Iran's nuclear weapons program. Experts are looking at this and saying, wow, 60 days is a staggeringly short timeline for negotiations of this magnitude and complexity. To make things even more tense, Iran is firmly stating they won't lift a finger on implementation until Friday's signing is completely official. Talk about a high-wire act with zero margin for error.
Now, what's truly wild here is the massive intelligence gap playing out behind the scenes. Right as this crucial 60-day nuclear negotiation kicks off, a major surveillance authority known as FISA Section 702 has completely lapsed. Congress literally left for recess without renewing it. Officials confirmed that this single authority provides a whopping 60% of the intelligence that goes into the president's daily briefing. Entering high-stakes nuclear talks while abruptly losing more than half of your signals intelligence, that is a geopolitical blind spot of epic proportions. It means negotiators are effectively flying blind on some absolutely crucial issues at the worst possible time.
And the broader peace framework is still incredibly complicated on the ground. Israel's defense minister has drawn a very firm line when it comes to their national security. Israel has made it clear they will not withdraw from 3 key occupied security zones, that's Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, under any broad international agreement. Crucially, they are also retaining the absolute right to act independently against Iran. So while Washington and Tehran might have a framework mapped out, the reality in the region remains incredibly tense, with independent actors holding fast to their strategic red lines.
Moving on to Part 2, the G7 summit agenda, diplomacy in France. Let's zoom out a bit and see how the rest of the world's major democracies are navigating this massive shift. President Trump has officially landed in Evian-les-Bains, France, for the 52nd G7 summit. It's quite a contrast, right? You have this quiet, picturesque resort town right on Lake Geneva, and it's suddenly hosting some of the heaviest geopolitical maneuvering we've seen in a decade. This gathering is a huge deal because it's the very first summit since the US-Iran war started 15 weeks ago. President Trump has already been holding bilateral meetings with French President Emmanuel Macron, digging into a heavy agenda. Alongside the new Iran deal, they're tackling pressing global trade tensions, the wild future of AI governance, and, of course, the ongoing war in Ukraine.
And speaking of Ukraine, there is some intense diplomatic maneuvering happening right now, just ahead of the summit's dedicated working session, as that war hits the 4.5-year mark. President Trump held critical, separate phone calls with both Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Interestingly, the Kremlin is publicly framing their call by claiming Trump promised to exert influence over Europe and Ukraine. Meanwhile, on the European side, EU leader Ursula von der Leyen is drawing a hard line. She's demanding verifiable behavioral changes before any Iran sanctions relief happens, while simultaneously pushing forward with a massive €90 billion loan to cover 2/3 of Kyiv's funding needs. So we're seeing diplomatic leverage being aggressively tested from every single side.
All right, Part 3, the Anthropic AI standoff, digital borders closing.
We are going to pivot entirely now, from physical borders opening across the globe to digital borders slamming completely shut. Let's dive into this unprecedented tech crisis.
As we speak, Anthropic's two absolute top-tier AI models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, have been completely unavailable globally for 5 straight days. Guys, this is a massive, totally unprecedented disruption. It all went down after the Commerce Department issued an emergency export control directive, literally forcing the company to pull the models offline. We are talking about the sudden, sweeping shutdown of a major tech platform by direct government order. It's a move that is sending absolute shockwaves through the global tech industry and really changing how we think about the stability of our digital infrastructure. The timeline on this reads like a Hollywood corporate thriller, and it moved incredibly fast. On Thursday, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, who represents Anthropic's largest outside investor, called up Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to talk about some specific jailbreak vulnerabilities in the models. Just hours later on Friday, boom, the government issues a sweeping export control directive. Fast forward to today, Monday, and senior Anthropic technical staff are locked in emergency in-person meetings at the Commerce Department, and they are rapidly scheduling even more high-stakes sit-downs with the CIA and White House science advisors, just trying to resolve this total blackout.
It's absolutely crucial that we understand both sides of this standoff impartially. The Trump administration, acting through Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, is citing strict, non-negotiable national security risks. Their major concern is that these powerful models could be deliberately diverted to military intelligence users in China, Russia, or other rival nations. But on the flip side, Anthropic, backed by a whole coalition of cybersecurity leaders, is arguing that these exact restrictions actually undermine national cyber defense. They point out that the vulnerability in question is pretty minor, and it already exists in competing foreign systems, like China's Kimi 2.7. Restricting American models while leaving foreign rivals totally untouched, they argue, does nothing for security and actively harms hundreds of millions of daily users.
Adding literal fuel to the fire here is a very public dispute over how this whole thing actually went down. White House AI and crypto advisor David Sachs publicly stated that the administration explicitly asked Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei to either patch the vulnerability or pull the model. And Sachs claims Amodei point-blank declined. While Anthropic vehemently disputes that version of events, they're saying they had prior explicit government approval to deploy Fable 5 in the first place, and that setting this kind of sudden zero-defect standard retroactively is completely unworkable for the software industry as a whole.
So why does this matter if you're not sitting in Silicon Valley? Well, because of what it means for global financial markets. Anthropic has confidentially filed for a highly anticipated U.S. IPO. But this ongoing standoff with the government, combined with the fact that the company was previously placed on a Pentagon national security blacklist, creates a total labyrinth of material risk disclosures. Financial analysts are already noting that this deep friction with the administration could seriously delay their IPO timeline, potentially shaving billions off their overall valuation. Trust me, when government policy and megatech valuations collide like this, the entire market pays very close attention.
All right, let's look at part 4, sports, culture, and climate, the background hum. To wrap up our explainer today, let's zoom back out. Because while these massive global and digital shifts are happening, everyday life continues, bringing some major cultural moments and climate realities right to the forefront.
The world keeps spinning, and it's doing so in wildly dramatic fashion right now. Over in New York, the Knicks just ended an agonizing 53-year championship drought. They captured their first NBA title since 1973, entirely powered by a literally historic 45-point performance from Jalen Brunson. Meanwhile, in what has to be one of the most unique broadcast events in sports history, UFC Freedom 250 threw down right on the White House South Lawn to celebrate Flag Day and President Trump's 80th birthday. Add to that the massive, expanded 48-team FIFA World Cup group stages rolling across North America, and yeah, it's a monumental week for global culture. But we've also got to note the stark environmental reality happening right now. A broad, very stubborn high-pressure ridge is building some dangerous summer heat across the south and southwest, prompting severe, life-threatening heat advisories.
I want to leave you with this final thought, because it really captures the wild juxtaposition of today's news. We are watching the Strait of Hormuz reopen, allowing global oil and physical trade to flow freely around the world once again. Yet, at the exact same moment, our most advanced AI tools are being pulled entirely offline by government mandates. It really begs the question, are we entering a new era where international trade flows freely, but the digital tools we rely on every single day are increasingly locked down? Think about that as you digest today's information. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to unpack the world.